Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. This is a new presentation from www.central-mosque.com and the Humble Heart YouTube channel. It is the 37th episode of the Making Sense series. Today, we will talk about what President Trump has said about Gaza and Palestine and try to dig deeper as to what is behind the bluster and what are the reasons why he's saying it. Throughout this presentation, in the top right-hand corner, will be a playlist of all the videos that I've made about Israel. So please feel free to watch them, inshallah, because they are very similar in the topic that we're going to talk about. So what has President Trump said? So he's basically said or repeated his wish to control Gaza, saying the region would be turned over to US by Israel. And he says it will be one of the greatest and most spectacular development on earth and no US troops will be required. He has repeated this claim that US is going to take over Gaza again and again and again. Before we talk about this, there are a few developments that we need to talk about that have also happened. So the Department of Government Efficiency, which is run by Elon Musk, under the President Trump, has shut down US aid. Now, there are two sides to the story, or three sides rather. One is the US media and the Western media that keeps talking about USAID being the biggest charitable organization around the world and how much good does it do for people in need. Then there's the Elon Musk side of the story, which says that there's a lot of misappropriation of funds and it wasn't really advancing the American agenda, etc. And then there's the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is the US aid does help people. However, US aid was soft power of the United States in cahoots with the CIA and actually advanced causes which the US government wanted. So for example, in Pakistan, they have spent a lot of money advancing LGBTQ causes. Also, Imran Khan, the democratically elected Prime Minister of Pakistan, he's now been out of power for 3 years. His party has been cracked down. There's been brutal suppression of human rights in Pakistan, and the three media groups of Pakistan which are in collaboration with the Pakistani military have turned a blind eye to this, such as the Express Media Group, the Geo News and Dawn Group, were all provided aids by the US aid. So US aid in reality was a soft cover for CIA and to advance American hegemony around the world. The second thing that's happened is all of the US foreign aid has been frozen except for Israel and Egypt. Now, you would understand Israel right off the bat, but you would think in your mind, why Egypt? And that's going to become clear to you very soon. When it comes to Israel, their goal has been nothing else but to expel the Palestinians from their land and to grab the land. They've been doing it before Israel was even a country. From the middle of around 1917 onwards, you've seen this very famous map where you've seen the expulsion of the Palestinian population. So the Palestinian population has been forced out of their lands into Syria, into Jordan, into the Sinai Desert, into Egypt. And by the way, the living conditions in Sinai are very brutal, inhospitable, but Israel continues to force these people to migrate from their lands. Okay, they've now been such a huge influx of Palestinians into adjoining areas, for example, Jordan. And by the way, there's been a very sharp reaction from the neighboring Arabs because President Trump, not only he said the US will take over Gaza, and people obviously asked him, so if US is going to take over Gaza and rebuild, where are these Palestinian people going to go? And he keeps on saying that the Arabs will take them. And his idea is basically Jordan and Egypt, and he's even said Saudi Arabia will foot the bill to put millions of Palestinians into Jordan, right, or into Egypt will destabilize the demographics of those countries and put enormous financial strains. So they don't want these Palestinians. In fact, Egypt is one of the few countries that control the border, and even the most desperate Palestinians who want to flee cannot flee because they are basically the Egyptian army and the Jordanian army close their borders and keep them in check. Don't forget that the democratically elected leader of Egypt, Dr. Mohammed Morsi, was not only, because of a military coup, he was removed from power, and later he was punished to death. And the United States has always backed the Egyptian military, and this is one of the reasons why they need to keep Egypt stable by injecting financial aid, just enough financial aid. They don't want to have Egypt thriving, Egypt become independent, but just like, having it partially sedated so it kind of exists as a country. That is the reason why the financial aid to Egypt hasn't been frozen. And by the way, those who think that Trump just speaks off the cuff, no, not really. The announcement of not stopping the aid to Egypt and Israel was made a few days before Trump made the announcement about Gaza. So in his mind, all of these Palestinians would go ahead and migrate into Egypt. Jordan is pretty much a US colony anyway, so they will do, no matter what the situation is, they will simply do whatever the US asks them to do. Let me just put this right off the bat. So the way things are looking like right now, the US takeover of Gaza is, we can say that it's very difficult to impossible, because number one, the Palestinians won't leave. Secondly, the Arabs have pretty much rejected this. As I've said, mass migration of Palestinians into Jordan or Egypt will basically disbalance the demographics in those countries, and it will put extreme hardships. The Saudis, who Trump administration is thinking will finance this, are refusing to pay this. The Western allies are refusing it because a lot of Western allies and NATO members subscribe to the two-state theory, and they outright refuse this. Now, Trump is saying that there will not be any U.S. service members in Palestine. However, this sort of plan is impossible without putting U.S. boots on the ground, and that is going to result in casualties. And Trump actually came to power to end wars, not to actually start sending U.S. troops to the Middle East. And this will obviously end the two-state solution, which notionally, grudgingly, a lot of Western allies and NATO members subscribe to. So why is Trump saying all of these things about Middle East? I mean, he's got plenty of things to do that he can do in his own backyard, about America first, about immigration, etc. You don't need to dig too deep into why Trump says that. He has said this again and again and again. And the biggest thing that irked him is when Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Barack Obama. Now, you can argue whether the Nobel Prize was right or wrong, and there's been movements to take away that Nobel Prize from Obama. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not the subject of my discussion right now. What I'm talking about here is that the Nobel Prize was granted, and he has never been comfortable with it. Trump is a narcissist, and he believes that he constantly compares himself to Obama, not even Biden. I mean, Biden was basically the president for 4 years before Trump just came. That's fine. However, his target has always been, take a look at his speeches and what he says. He has never been able to live with the fact that, and I'm going to put it very crudely, in Trump's mind, that a black man got Nobel Prize. Okay, and he's never been able to live with it, and he wants it. He wants the Nobel Prize, and he's going to say, my Nobel Prize was greater or for bigger causes or whatever. The Nobel Prize that was granted to President Obama was for his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between people, particularly in the Middle East. So that is one specific reason why Donald Trump continues to poke his nose into Middle East, because he knows that if he can do something about the Middle East, then he wants to become infamous. He wants to be remembered. He wants to actually announce that his achievement. So two things he wants to do is, I have a feeling that sooner or later there's going to be a conflict in Iran. Whether it is going to be by Israel or by America or by the NATO allies or by someone else, there's going to be conflict in Iran no matter what. They're going to try to change the regime or something like that. And he's also very serious about shaking up the Middle East. No matter, so Gaza or the Palestinian people are just a small pawn, unfortunately, in his machinations, right? And this is what Donald Trump wants to do, because in his mind, Obama achieved the Nobel Prize by his actions in the Middle East. So he wants to do something bigger, broader, shake the world, etc. And by the way, in my opinion, and let me remind you again that it's in this top right hand corner, you'll see the playlist for all the videos that I've made about Israel. Saudi Arabia wants to recognize Israel. MBS specifically wants to recognize Israel. He's not coming from an ideological perspective. He's not coming from a Islamic perspective. He wants to do that, and he wants to extract a price for doing that. And Saudi Arabia, if Saudi Arabia goes ahead and does that, then there will be other nations who will be joining them. If Saudi Arabia recognizes Israel, then obviously one country they want alongside them is Pakistan. We will discuss that in a separate topic, but that's what I wanted to point out, that the reason Trump is doing and saying things, what he's saying about Palestine, is because he wants to make his mark in his mind on the world history. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.